Hey everyone, Craig here, and today I'm going to be covering Molecule and basic Molecule and Ansible role development. So at my current kind of engagement, we're doing an awful lot of development around Ansible roles. And one of the biggest concerns that we've got is how do we, adequately build and design and test these things? How do we know that whenever we make some changes to our code, that it's going to work? And so this is where Molecule comes in. Molecule is a nice testing tool which allows us to run our Ansible roles against a known target environment. And what that means is we basically want to be able to run our role against a thing that is the same every time we run it. And we're going to utilize containerization for this. We're going to use Docker. Because Docker gives us a really easy, lightweight environment that will allow us to run most of our roles into. There's a couple of exceptions to that. Anything that needs to change, say, some kind of low-level system property, or something like NTP, that's a little bit more difficult to test. And if you're developing anything against Windows, again, that becomes a little bit more difficult to test. But certainly it doesn't stop you doing some of the basics like linting, and linting will save you hours and hours just in troubleshooting things. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. I've got my terminal window here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to start from scratch. I've got pip installed already, but apart from that, so if I do pip version, there we go, and I think I don't have Ansible. Excellent, because we're going to be installing Ansible with pip. So I just wanted to prove that I didn't have this actually installed as a package on the system yet. So if I go ahead and make a directory here and we call it Ansible demo, and inside of Ansible demo, if I just do this, we're going to use a tool called virtualenv. Now virtualenv is a tool for Python, and what it lets you do is kind of run Python applications with all the kind of dependent libraries and bits and pieces and all the packages that you might include in its own little unique place. So in our case, we're going to create a virtualenv here called Ansible. And it's literally just a case of making sure that virtualenv is installed via pip. So pip install virtualenv. And then when you come to create a virtualenv, just type in virtualenv Ansible, and it will generate a virtual environment with Python for you with the name Ansible. So if we look in our directory to see what that means, we've literally got a directory called Ansible. So let's go into this and see what's there. So in our directory, it's created a few things. Maybe if I do a tree, tree's not going to work on this. All right, I've got that package installed. Well, it's created a few things, and the main thing that we're kind of interested in is located in this bin directory, and we want to do source bin activate, and this will put us into our Python virtual environment now, and this means that we can go ahead and install various dependencies and requirements and all sorts of bits and bobs without worrying about messing up our system. Because if you install pip without being in a from pip without being in a virtual environment, whatever modules or upgrades or anything else that you're doing is going to affect the rest of your system. And quite a few systems, so CentOS, for example, is dependent on a particular version of Python. If you start messing around with the Python modules or any of that kind of stuff, then you're going to be in for a bad time. So that's why we use the virtual environment. So we're in our virtual environment here, and I'm going to do pip install molecule. We're going to also install Ansible because we want the latest version of Ansible. We're going to install Molecule's Docker plugin, and we're going to install the Docker binding as well. And if I go ahead and install that, it's going to pull down all of the packages and dependencies and all the bits and pieces that are required for this to work. So we'll just wait for this to happen. Okay, so that's pulled down all of our dependencies, and if we go now and just say, Ansible, what version are you? Hey look, we got the latest version of Ansible, great. What about Molecule? Yeah, we've got Molecule too, so that's brilliant. That means that we can now go ahead and start developing. So I'm going to move up a directory so that we're back in this Ansible demo directory. And what we want to do is go ahead and create a new role. Now, if I take a look here at the molecule documentation, the first thing in this getting started section is creating a new role. So let's have a look. So Molecule uses Ansible Galaxy under the hood to generate its conventional role layouts. So Ansible Galaxy is the tool that you would normally use to generate a role for Ansible. So the fact that it includes this and uses that and kind of layers the testing in on top of that is really great. So literally all we need to do here is, if I go back over here, it should just be a molecule, init role -r, and then what we'll call our role Ansible demo role. There we go, and that's created the code for us. So if I go and open this up in Visual Studio Code, we've got our Ansible demo role directory here, and if we go and just take a look at what's in there, we've got some defaults, nice empty file there. We've got handlers, which is also empty. We've got the metadata. Now, if you go ahead and create a role, don't forget to update your metadata and apply an appropriate license. So at the moment, this is just kind of an example of what a license should be. So make sure you change that. Also change the minimum Ansible version. So if you're developing against Ansible 2.8 and you don't foresee needing to use your roles on any earlier version of Ansible, maybe you're coding with the Ansible 2.8 kind of spec and intricacies in mind, then go ahead and set that to Ansible 2.8 just for kind of compatibility, because you don't want to be trying to pull down a role and trying to run it if you know you've got Ansible 2.4 or something on your system, because you might run into issues. Not always, but sometimes. You've also got platforms here, and this helps tell Ansible what platforms that you can actually run your role against. I won't go into too much detail, but it's always a good idea to set that. Also set some tags and any dependencies that you've got. So if you're including any other roles, make sure you list them out there. It's all kind of going to help your life be a bit easier when you come to kind of larger scale deployments. Now, if we take a look at the molecule directory here, we've got one directory called default, and this is your default test scenario, and this is where your tests start getting defined. So when you start getting more complicated and having multiple sets of tests, you can have multiple directories of scenarios and run them kind of individually. In our case, we're just going to set up something really basic. And the way we're going to do this is we've got a test here. So this is a Python infraspec test. And all it's doing is it's using the Ansible inventory. Where are we? Here we go. The Ansible inventory. And it's getting all of the hosts from the all host group. All being a special group that just means all of your hosts. And then it's running a test. So our first test here is test the host file against the current host. And in this case, it's trying to look for a file, and that file is /etc/hosts. And it's just looking to prove that A, that file exists, B, that it's owned by the correct user, in this case root, and C, that it's owned by the correct group. So in this case, root again. And obviously you can layer in your own checks, like making sure that services are started, enabled, exist, packages are installed, all that kind of stuff. And you can do that through this. So this is kind of a way of validating that your Ansible role or playbook has done what you expected it to. It's kind of happy path testing. The next thing we'll have a look at, we'll go down in order here, is the Docker file. So this is a really simple Docker file that is literally just building a basic container for us. And this is going to be where it's actually just layering in the stuff, I think, for Molecule to run properly inside of it. But yeah, we're literally just going to use this. You shouldn't need to modify that unless you're behind a proxy or something like that. Then you might want to drop your proxy settings in. I know in some of our environments where we've been testing, we've needed to do that. Otherwise, we've had a bit of a problem. So the install, so this is actually reminding me that we need to have Docker installed. I don't have Docker installed yet, so we're going to need to go ahead and do that. But the rest of it is just telling you use a virtual environment. It's saying use a user flag, It doesn't really matter at the moment. And then install the Molecule Docker add-on with pip install, which we've already done. The Molecule file here itself, this is kind of the outline of your test. So it's defining where your dependencies come from, where you're going to do your actual testing, so where you're going to stand up your test environment. You don't have to use Docker, the support for Vagrant and things like that. So if you wanted to use something else, you can do that. If you want to craft something that, say you want to use vCenter or something like that, and or OpenShift, and you want to stand up a container to do that, or a VM to do that, and there's no support in the tool, well, you can do that. You literally change this to the custom driver, and you can use Ansible to start up and provision those environments for you. So that's quite a nice little feature. It also allows us to specify the linter that we want to use. So we're just going to use the default YAML lint. And the platforms we're going to test against, we're just going to test against the standard CentOS 7 container. The provisioner, we're going to use Ansible for that, and again it's just running Ansible lint against it. And then finally the verifying stage. So this is our, did the playbook do what it said it was going to do? We're just going to use test info with the Flake 8 linter for this, and so that looks really good. Our playbook, so this playbook, all it's going to do is it's called Converge because it's applying your role to a clean environment. We want this to run against all of our hosts, and the role that we're going to be using is, it's got a bit of an arbitrary name, but this needs to be the same as the directory that you're running this from. If it's not, then you're going to have a problem. It's not going to run very well. So if we take a look at we'll come out of the Molecule piece now, and we'll just look at the Ansible role and see what's going on. So we don't have any tasks in our role, so let me go ahead and put one in there. Okay, so what I've done here is I've created a file that goes ahead and it just double checks to see if this file etc.foo.conf exists, and then it registers that to a variable. If it does exist, well, even if it doesn't, what it does here is it checks to see if that exists and if it's set to false. So basically, if this file doesn't exist, then it's going to go ahead and touch it. What I've had to do as part of this is just set this no QA 601, because what was happening was the linter was picking this up and complaining about it, because it doesn't like foo.stat.exist to be compared to false, but actually that's perfectly valid Ansible. So if we go ahead and run our test now, we can see that the steps it's going to go through is it's going to lint everything, it's going to do dependency checks, it's going to clean up the space, it'll destroy the test environment just to make sure that there's no pre-existing Docker containers or anything like that. It's then going to double check the syntax before it goes ahead and creates a new test environment. It will prepare the test environment, just by making sure that any packages and bits and bobs that are required are there, and then it will go and run your playbook against it before it runs it for a second time for an idempotence check, checks for any kind of unwanted side effects, and then runs your infraspec test before it cleans up and destroys itself. And so we can see right now it's just been through the infraspec test, so it's gone all the way through that, and we can see here that it's not very verbose, but you can tell this to print out each of the tests if you want, if you don't want to have just kind of a nothing shown unless it's a problem. Some people prefer that. I think, well, I prefer to see all of the tests that are being run, but if you've got quite an extensive test set, then it can be a little bit verbose, and you end up with a lot of output. But anyway, as you can see, here's a real easy way to get started with testing your Ansible roles. You can apply this kind of format to playbooks as well. And it starts becoming really powerful when you start throwing this into Jenkins and other pipeline tools. And so anytime you may raise a merge request or a pull request or something like that, your code gets tested. You're then starting to build confidence in your code base and about what's being committed into master. So I'd highly recommend you pick this up if you're using Ansible as kind of a process. It's really a light touch. It can be a little bit frustrating to start with, going through some of these kind of linting steps, but once you get your code there, and once you've been through it, the hard work is really only once, and the rest of it is all kind of maintenance. So I'd highly recommend kind of picking that up. Anyway, I've talked enough, so thank you very much. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you liked it, give us a like, a subscribe, all that kind of stuff, the YouTubey jazz. If you didn't, please give me some feedback. Anyway, thanks very much. Have a good day. Bye bye.